Here I have an upcoming model from Duzu watches. Now I've covered quite a few of their models over the years. You can find the reviews on the channel and website. But one thing the watches always had in common was their distinct design. Designs which not only stood out and looked like nothing else on the market, but were also inspired by the ocean or ocean creatures or the Western Australian landscape. The Diver 4.0, as it's being called, is a little more traditional, a little more tame. The case is also 40 millimeters, a first, I believe, for Duzu, and has a snowflake style hour hand and indices that remind me of chiclets. It will be available in a black dial only, but will come with either a blasted finish, as seen in this video, an all DLC version, and a brushed version. Now, these are not available yet. They will most likely go on pre-order or Kickstarter the end of February 2025 with a completion date of around June 2025. They all use the Miyota 9015 movement and pricing will start at $379. As usual, I'll go over everything in this video, so let's dive into this review of the Duzu Diver 4.0. So this is an interesting piece from Duzu. The design at first glance looks a lot like a lot of other dive watches on the market. I mean, the bezel and the hour and the minute hand and the overall dial layout. Again, at least from a glance, it's going to remind many of a Tudor Pelagos. Now, on closer inspection, you will notice the hour hand does not square off at the top like the Tudor snowflake hands. Rather, it has an arrow tip. The indices are sized pretty much the same and in the same layout, but they are applied in slightly rounded squares, rectangle, and triangles. Again, the small square ones kind of remind me of chiclets. But it's when you start looking around the case that you see that this is anything but a Pelagos homage. Now, before I get too far into this, I'll put all the specs here on screen, and let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this design. Now, at first, I really thought this was a confused design, especially before I got it in hand, having only seen the pictures on Duzu's social media. I mean, any way you slice it, the dial and bezel was definitely inspired by the Pelagos. But like I said, then you look at the case itself, and it's a very different story. Wayne from Duzu said he wanted this watch to reach a wider audience, so he designed something that would be a little simpler, if you will, not so crazy and out there like some of his past releases, and also a smaller size, as many have been downsizing. Or, at the very least, like I have talked about here a lot, there is a decent sized portion of the watch enthusiasts or watch community these days wanting and buying, more importantly, buying smaller sized watches. But this isn't exactly a small watch, at least not like many of the other brands are producing. The bezel is 40 millimeters, but when I measure 10 to 4, it's about 41.5, and the 9 to 3 measurement, including the crown, I get 44 millimeters. And with that domed sapphire, I get 14.5 millimeters, and this has 22 millimeter lugs along with that non-tapering H and U-link bracelet. Now, it's not dainty, if you will, and if I offend somebody by saying that, I apologize. Maybe I should say it's not exactly svelte. It's still a chunky boy and has some real heft to it as well. Now, for his core customers, this may still be too small or too traditional, but he is looking for a broader appeal. But that doesn't mean Wayne phoned it in either. Moving away from the bezel insert and the dial, this watch has a unique case shape and a lot of character. The non-crown side, he took the bellied case from the DWD3, which I reviewed last year, I believe. I'll link it here in the video. And the crown guards were slightly inspired by the DWD2. I'll link that up above as well. Now, those crown guards were insanely massive, and that was a big, chunky block of a watch. Again, this is much more refined, but what intrigues me more beyond the crown guards here, which are pretty restrained really, is the sharp curves to the case on the crown side. That cut into the case is deep, and it immediately reminded me of what some call the original micro brand diver, the Dreadnought, and it also reminded me of the Obrus Morgan Infinity Diver. Both had a similar case design, and while it may have not been intentional, it kind of feels like a throwback to those watches. The case is all blasted, but there is an all black DLC model, and there will be a brushed model as well. And the blasted one, I am told, will have a hard coating applied to it. Now, I'm not sure if this pre production piece has it or not, but it has seemingly held up well to being knocked around my studio for the photo shoot and recording this video, along with a few trips to the stores. I unfortunately was not able to wear it as much as I liked, but more on that in a minute. Let's talk about functionality and readability. And obviously, if you have eyes, you will already know this is an extremely legible watch. The dial is covered with a domed sapphire, but I don't find it all too reflective, especially with that matte dial underneath. The dial is pretty clean. You have the logo, which is not a sandwich logo this time, and it's not loomed either, though I don't feel either of those matter. And it's only got two lines of text. Now, again, I'm not sure why brands insist to put the word automatic on the dial. This space could have been used for the model name, but again, it's a very clean dial. I was surprised it has the date. I kind of would have liked to have seen no date with this style of watch and these indices, but I do appreciate how they did a half indice behind the date to keep things kind of cohesive. And let's just take a look as much as possible as we can with these dial indices. These are pretty cool to look at, I'm not going to lie, especially when you get up close. They really raise up off the dial. And yes, that 10 o'clock one has some of that loom paint outside the lines. But remember, this is not a production watch, it's pre production, so keep that in mind. The bezel action, it's superb. That chunky gear or coin edge grip is a joy to grasp and turn all 120 clicks. And honestly, I don't use bezels. I rarely turn them or play with them, but I have to say this one has been kind of addictive. I found myself turning it just for the hell of it more than I do with most watches, and the wife was not amused. Oh, and that is a matte ceramic bezel insert as well to match the matte black dial. I'll admit to being a sucker for a matte ceramic insert. I just love them over the glossy ceramic, especially on a watch like this. The crown is the same way. Lots of grip, easy to manipulate and turn and screw back down. It's a sizable crown as well for a 40 millimeter watch at 6.6 millimeters. The case back is bellied a little as well. It's not flat, and this is where you'll find some additional info, including the model name, and it is a screw down case back, as you can see. Now, I mentioned earlier that I wasn't able to wear it as much as I wanted to, and it's not because I needed to ship this out to someone else as I was on a time crunch, which I was, but more so because the bracelet is pretty short as it is. I have a 7.5 inch or 19.05 centimeter wrist, and I had to have that old school push button dive extension all the way out to be able to wear this, and even then it was a little tighter than I would wear a bracelet watch. So when I felt it start to dig in or leave a mark on my wrist, I had to take it off. I actually had to take it off while I was driving for about an hour or so, as it just ended up getting too tight with the heat on in the car. So, what's the deal with that? I'm guessing a few links are just missing based on the amount of links on the 12 o'clock side versus the 6 o'clock side. Either Wayne forgot to put them back in or send them to me, or the factory screwed up, but I'm sure it'll be corrected when these watches are finished, as I would imagine a watch like this should fit up to an 8-inch wrist easily. Last but not least, we have the loom. And just look at that glorious loom. It's BGW9. It's all over the watch. It glows like crazy, and you should get through, I don't know, probably a good 5 to 6 hours easily through the night of this still glowing. Excellent job on the loom as usual for Duzu. Now, the pricing on these should be under $400, with this blasted one being the most at $395, $379 for the DLC and brushed models. And I believe somewhere in the 500s, I think 550 for this one once they are in stock. Now, these are going to be going up either for pre order or Kickstarter. I have no idea which. I guess Wayne is still figuring that out. But it should be sometime at the end of February. But just remember, all things can change. Now, if you head over to the Duzu website and scroll down on the bottom of the homepage, it does look like he has a newsletter sign up. And of course, you can follow them on social media. I'm pretty sure they'll be letting everyone know when these are ready to order. In the meantime, you can check out their other watches and our past reviews on their previous models if you're not familiar with the brand. Now, I always want to hear from you, so sound off in the comments. Let me know what you think of the Duzu Diver 4.0. Before you go ahead and click or scroll away, go ahead and leave a like if you like this video, and subscribe and turn on notifications. You'll never miss any of our reviews that way, and it's greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.